right before the middle of the Amud. Machlokas in the Mishnah, if an oath in the future is going to be valid or not. Machlokas Rabbi Shmuel said, oath in the past, sorry. Rabbi Shmuel says no, Rabbi Kiva says yes. We ended up saying that they each followed their Rebbe. It's always a good thing to do. So, and when they had one of these ways to expound the Torah, when at once and you have your setup is you have a general statement followed by a specific statement followed by a general statement. Do you say that you include everything, limit a few things, and then include a few more? Or do you, very vague, define what the vagueness is, and then you're going to add a few more? So depending on how you expound the Torah in general will make a difference in our situation. And let's see. So my Rabbi Akiva Darashibu Miute, what's the opinion? Where's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who expounds in the way of Ribui Umiute, where you include everything and then limit a few things? So here's going to be a good example. The Tanya, as the Brisa states, O nefesh kisi shava, a soul, a person who makes a shvua, who makes a swear, he makes an oath. What oath? Any oath. Doesn't say. General. Lahara o lehetiv, which either to do good or to do bad, right? Miet, that limits it. Not any oath. Specific kinds of oaths called lahara o lehetiv, oaths that are going to be either detrimental or going to be positive. So miet, that specifies it. L'kol asher yivate ha'adam, to any shvua a person utters. It's general. Chazer v'riba, it goes back and generalizes. So now, riba umiet v'riba, generalizing, specifying. Generalizing, riba hakol. It includes everything. Mayu riba, what is it? What's everything? Riba kol mili, it includes everything which is lahara ulehetiv, which is either going to be detrimental or going to be in the positive. I will eat, I won't eat. Umay miet. So what are you coming to exclude then? It sounds like everything's included. No. Miet dvar mitzvah. We're coming to exclude a dvar mitzvah, something which is that you're not able to do. You're not able to go and violate a mitzvah. So that is going to be excluded. Yeah. So that is Rabbi Akiva. So you see nothing in Rabbi Akiva about limiting from past oaths. Oaths are included as long as the oath is in a category of, as long as it's something which is able to be done. So then it's going to be included. It's just excluding things from mitzvahs. Okay. Rabbi Shmuel, who excludes past oaths, I ate, I didn't eat. How does he know that? Darish klal uprat. He expounds in the klal uprat format. Let's see. O nefesh kisi shava levate bismasayim klal. A person who makes a shvua. So now, according to this way, it's not that it includes everything, it's that it's vague. It needs a definition, right? Someone starts telling you, if you're in class and they tell you a term, right, that you don't know what it means. So instead of raising your hand and asking what it means, you just wait and you'll find out, right? So same thing here. It says a general thing. A shvua you'll be liable in. Well, what is that referring to? Let's define it. So then it says, lahara o lehetiv. That shvua that I was talking about is referring to a specific shvua called lahara o lehetiv, something that you a positive or in the negative in the future. Prat. That's the explanation of it. Then it says l'chol asher yivate adam chazer v'klal. Then it sounds like it's including something. So what's it including? Klal uprat uklal iyatadan ella ke'ena prat. I only can add things that are very, very similar to what the prat is, what the prat is, what the middle case is. So since the general thing is vague, in the middle it specifies for you, it defines for you what it's referring to. When it goes and repeats again in another general and it uses a general language, it's coming to add things which are very similar to the detail. So iyatadan ela ke'ein haprat, it has to be just like the prat, just like the detail, which is what? Mahaprat mefurish lehaba. Well, examine very precisely what the definition of that shvua was. It was a shvua which was in the future. I will do, I won't do. So now, af kol lehaba, therefore, we're going to include anything which is similar to the future. Af kol lehaba. So, okay. Ahani kol asuya afilu dvarim she'ein behem hara v'hatava lehaba. So we're going to include things that are, even things that aren't necessarily detrimental to you or productive to you. Like I don't know, I will do jumping jacks. I don't know, I'll run around a few times. I don't know, I'll give you a high five, whatever. Things like that that aren't I will eat, I won't eat. So we're going to include future oaths. Ahani prata, the prat, the detail was the meute, was coming to exclude afilu dvarim sheyesh behen hara v'hatava, coming to exclude things that don't have that element at all. L'sha'avar, in the past. So we're including things that are in the future. We're excluding things that are in the past. That's where Rabbi Shmuel learns why past are excluded. So the Gemara is going to ask now, like, how did you choose that? On the one hand, you have a prat, that middle detail that specifies what the oath is talking about. That's coming to exclude something. Then you have that second word after the prat, which is general, coming to include something. So we just said you were including things that weren't detrimental to you as long as they're future. And you're excluding things that were in the past. Maybe flip it. How do you know which way to go? Maybe say things that are in the past, as long as they're as long as they're regarding me, I ate, I didn't eat, should be included. And things in the future that have no relevance to me, no direct relevance to me, high-fiving, jumping jacks, whatever it is, those should be excluded. So even after we have a klal upratu klal, all I know is that something is included and something is excluded. How does Rabbi Shmuel know it's coming to exclude past oaths, maybe include past oaths, and exclude future oaths that have no direct relevance to you? So says the Gemara, Epoch Ana, why don't you flip it? So we'll give a few answers. Amar Rav Yitzchak, no. You're not going to flip it. Why? Because it has to be as specific as possible to lahara ulehativ, to that definition of I will do or I won't do. So dumil de lahara ulehativ misha isuro. So look at I will do and I won't do. What happens when I will do and I won't do? You make a future oath. So if you don't keep it, you're going to be over the prohibition of lo yachal devaro. You're making your words profane. Right? Saying an oath about the past, you're not committing to anything. You're just stating something. I ate. Okay, so did you not eat? I don't know. So, but I will eat, you're committing to something. And if you don't keep that, so then you've made your words, which are holy, you've profaned them. So therefore, we're only going to include something which is similar to that. That's only going to be a future oath. That's not going to be a past oath. So we'll include future things which aren't directly relevant to me, but at least they're future, because it's similar to the Torah's definition of I will do and I won't do. Past oaths are not in violation of Bayachal Devaro. Ella mishum bal teshakru. It's a different problem. You're lying. You're a liar. I ate. No, you didn't. Okay, so that's a different problem, but it's more similar future oaths that are not have no direct relevance to my life, like eating or drinking, so which are directly relevant to me. Those are more similar than a past oath, and therefore those are included, and a past oath is excluded. That's one answer. Amar Cross says the verse states, "Oh nefesh kisi shava levate bisvasayim." It says a person makes a shvuah levate bisvasayim. He was to utter with his lips. Misha hashvua kodemes lebitui. The oath has to precede the utterance. We'll see what that means in a second, and not the other way around. Velo shehabitui kodemes leshvua. Not that the utterance was already preceded the shvua. Past oaths, the action preceded the shvua. So the Torah says levate bisvasayim. You make a shvua levate bisvasayim. So what he's saying is it has to be something that hasn't happened yet. You're making a shvua about something. Now, if you made a shvua, an oath about the past, so the action already happened. If you make a shvua, I ate already, so in time, the eating happened before the oath. However, he understands that when the Torah says, make an oath to utter with your lips, that the oath has to come before whatever you're saying happened. That only applies to future, because that hasn't happened yet. By definition, the past has already happened. So, but the future has not happened yet. So therefore, two answers why in Rabbi Shmuel's klal uprat uklal we're excluding future oaths. Fine. So that's that. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel, fine. Now, more laws relating this to oaths. Taner Rabbanan says the Brisa, ha-adam b'shvua, the person in the shvua. What does it mean, the person in the shvua? Ha-adam. What does that mean? Prat la'anus. This is coming to exclude if you somehow violate, if you make a shvua when it's an unavoidable accident. Question is, how do you make a shvua? It's an unavoidable accident. Right? Usually unavoidable accidents like, I don't know, I was watching your stuff and a hurricane hit my house, a tornado hit my house. I couldn't stop it. That's unavoidable, right? How do you make a shvua that's unavoidable? So we'll see. Yeah, pral anus, v'ne'elam, the word I had a lapse, is coming to exclude when you did not have a lapse. Prat lemezid, you did it advertently. When you advertently say, I swear I will do this, and you go and you do it, so you have no lapse, right? You make a shvua, I'm not going to do this. And then you go and you do it advertently, so then there's no lapse. So then you're not going to bring a sacrifice for that. It's only if you do it with a lapse. Mimenu, shenis alma mimenu shvua. It has to be that the lapse was from what? From the oath. Yachol shenis alma mimenu chayfetz. We're going to get back to this. You would have thought maybe if the object, you had a lapse from the object. How do you have a lapse from the object and not a lapse from the shvua, right? You prohibited yourself from eating something, right? So if you forgot that you weren't allowed to eat it, you had a lapse from the oath. How do you have a lapse from the object? So we'll see. Maybe you took the wrong object. Let's see. Fine. Talmud lomar b'shvua. It says b'shvua. V'ne'elam b'shvua v'ne'elam, the oath and the lapse. Al helim shvua hu chayiv ve'eno chayiv al helim chayfetz. I'm not going to be liable for the lapse of an object. Now we're going to go back to each one of those cases and explain all the details in the brisa. Amar Mar. So Master said, ha'adam b'shvua. A person has to be there when he makes the shvua. He can't not be there. What's not be there? It can't be unavoidable. Rashi gives an interesting definition. His heart has to be there. Ha'adam b'shvua. You have to have your heart there when you make the shvua. Excluding an anus, an unavoidable shvua where your heart's not there. Says the Gemara, hey Chidami, what's the case? How do you make a shvua when you're not there? Funny, I'm thinking now, maybe you were drunk. I guess that doesn't count. That's interesting. Okay. So hey Chidami, Kid Rav Kahana, Rav Asi. So this is an in into the life of a yeshiva man. Yeah. So the Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, they were both students of Rav. So it sounds like the lecture finished, the Talmudic discourse was completed, and they went and they're still talking about it. And what happens? Obviously, they get into a fight of what their teacher said, right afterwards. For sure he said like this. No, for sure he said like that. So how can we come the Rav? Amar Shvuasa the Hachiyam Rav. I made a shvua. The guy really intense fighting. The guy makes a shvua that Rav said that. So Amar no shvua the Hachiyam Rav. Shvuasa the Hachiyam Rav. No, I make an oath that this is what Rav said. He for sure said it like this. No, he for sure said it like this. And they each make an oath. So then, well, what do? They went to Rav. Go to the teacher and ask what he said. So yeah. So also coming to Rav, they went during visiting hours, and they went to Rav, and they said, fighting. What did you say? He told them, I said like this, and it's sided with one of them. So let's say it was Reuben and Shimon. So no, it wasn't. It was Rav Kahana or Rasi. Let's say it was either like Rav Kahana or it was like Rav Asi. He tells them it was like one of you. So Amr le'idach, oy, he said, I can't believe it. I made a shvua sheker. I made an oath which was false. So ve'idach va'ana b'shikrei shtabi. I feel so bad. I'm guilty. I made so Amr le, he told him, don't worry, libcha anscha. Your heart your heart caused you to do it. Meaning, you were so involved in the argument and so convinced that you were right that you made that oath. But that's considered where your heart sort of, it was unavoidable. He was so convinced it was going to be the right thing. So that's considered a shvua where you're considered an anus. You're considered an anus. Some chance it's unavoidable, but where your heart really wasn't there. You were just so convinced that it was the right thing to do that you're exempt. Question is, you're exempt from what? You're definitely exempt from a sacrifice. You don't bring a sacrifice. That's what it's talking about. The question is, though, are you exempt from your diary that you keep at home that jots down every avera you did, and you have to do tshuva for it? Like, it's considered like it's not an avera at all, or no, it's for sure the wrong thing. You just don't bring a sacrifice for it. That's interesting. That's a discussion. Yeah. How far do we take this? It was your heart that did it. How far does that go? Exclude from a sacrifice, or you're off the record. It doesn't go on your avera record. So okay, v'nelma mimenu. So it had to be a lapse from you. Shenis alma mimenu shvua. So it was a lapse from you. Yachol shenis alma mimenu chayfet. You would have thought you can have a lapse from the object. We'll see what that means in a second. Tamalom b'shvua. V'nela mimenu al helam shvua hu chayvenu chayv al helam chayfetz. Okay, on this idea that you have to have a lapse from the person and not a lapse from the object, they thought it was so ridiculous. In Eretz they would laugh about this. What does that mean? How do you make a shvuah, and now the only way you're going to be exempt, not the only way, but a way to be exempt from a sacrifice is you had a lapse, like we had in the beginning. You forgot this was the base of Mikdash. You forgot you were impure. You forgot the food was holy. So what's the event? What's the case where you know it's a shvuah, you know it's an oath, and you know it's the wrong thing to do, but you had a lapse from the object, which is not a lapse from the oath. It's like a riddle. So on that riddle, they left. So So says the Gemara, it's going to flesh it out. It makes sense when you have a lapse of a shvuah and not a lapse from the object. What's the case? You made an oath. I'm not eating wheat bread. Okay. And you thought that you already ate wheat bread. You thought that the oath was, I will eat wheat bread. Okay. So she'ochel kamar. So dishvuase inshi, you forgot about the shvuah. But cheftza dakir, but the object you remembered. You knew that there was something relating to wheat bread. You forgot. Did you say, I will not eat or I will eat? So that's a lapse of the shvuah, right? I will not eat wheat bread. I'm going gluten-free, right? And then a few days later, you're like, I'm pretty sure I said I definitely will be I will be gluten, not I'll be gluten-free. And you go and you eat it. So there you forgot about the shvuah. You had a lapse in your oath, but the object you remembered. So what's the case where you don't remember the object? Ela chayfetz below shvuah heichidami. How is it possible to have a lapse from the object and not a lapse from the oath? So the Gemara attempts to say, Kigon the Amar shvuah shlo ochel paschitin. Reuven makes an oath, I'm not eating wheat bread. Okay, he makes an oath. Ukasavar, and he goes to the fridge and he goes to the bread basket and he picks out barley bread. Ukasavar shel seorim kavar. So here's a case. The shvu also dakirle. The shvuah he remembered. He remembered that I will not eat wheat bread. He knows that's true. He just goes and he messes up the object. He goes and he takes barley bread. So now the Gemara thinks that's an example. The shvuah. Jared's laughing. What's so funny?
I told myself what was I going to grab?
Yeah, so before you go upstairs, don't make an oath. So yeah. So the Gemara thinks that's an example. The shvuah, the words of the shvuah, I will not eat wheat bread. I remembered. I never forgot that. Just it wasn't labeled for me. My wife didn't label for me what's wheat, what's barley, and I have no idea. So yeah, it's like I'm still asking, is this dairy or meat? I have no idea. Like so kasavar shows arm cover. The shvase dakile chefza inchi, chefza inchi, the object you forgot about. So, but the Gemara says, "Kaven de chefza inshilahu, hainu helam shvua." The Gemara says, "Well, since you forgot about the object, so in essence, that's considered having a lapse from the oath. They go together because your oath was, I will not eat wheat bread, and you had a lapse because you thought that this was barley bread. So that's also considered having a lapse of the oath because you said something and you had a lapse. You thought it was something else. So, oh, there we go. So,
There you go.
yeah. So
every morning I feel like a pretzel after
one second. Some pretzels you can buy are very large. The hot pretzels. So kevan de chefza inshilahu. So since you forgot about the object, so hainu helam shvua, that is an example of having a lapse in the oath because the oath was X, and you thought that this was the difference between this and thinking that the food is holy, is mundane, right? That we understand for some reason. You made an oath. You're impure, right? And you go and and you can't eat the holy food. So you thought it wasn't holy, and you go eat it. That's considered a lapse. So too, you're not allowed to have wheat bread, and you go and you take something which you thought was barley and it wasn't wheat. So says the Gemara, that's also hainu helash. That's also considered a lapse of a shvua. Ella Amar Rabbi Elazar. Ella Amar Rabbi Elazar. You're right. David Achasi. You're right. He sort of like rejects that previous teaching. You're right. You can't switch them. If you make a shvua and you forget about the object, that's also considered having a lapse in your oath. That's any time you're forgetting something regarding your oath is a lapse in your oath. Whether you forgot what the oath was, you forgot what it was about, you were confused by the object, that still be considered that it's a level of shogeg. You had a lapse. Maskif la Rav Yosef Alma chayfetz below shvua lo mishkachas. It sounds like then, according to you, Rabbi Elazar, that you're not going to have a case where you're going to forget about the object, and it'll be considered that you still remembered the oath. Doesn't exist. He said, I'll find you a case. I'll find you a case. Kigon to Amar Shvua Shlo Ochel Paschitin. A guy makes an oath, I will not eat wheat bread. Fine. V'hoshit yado l'sal. He puts his arm, reaches in to the basket to take out barley bread. Fine. He's well aware, I can't eat wheat bread. I'm taking barley bread. However, somebody switched on him. They put in the barley bread, wheat bread. V'alsa biyado shel chitin. So he took out from there bread, which is really wheat bread, but he thought it was barley bread. It was in the basket saying barley bread. Ukisaver sa'orimhi va'achla. So here, dishvu ase dakirla cheftehu delo yadolei. So here, from beginning to end, the entire time he had no lapse in his oath. I will not eat wheat bread. He goes into the basket. He pulls out what he's convinced is barley bread, and he eats it. So he himself had no lapse. But the object got switched. So that should be a good case. So Amar le Abaye, klum mechayeves like korban. So Ella amai the toughest biyade. So says Abaye that what? He says you're only going to be liable, you're not going to be liable for a sacrifice only for that which is in your hands. Ella amai the toughest biyade. So that's still considered a helam shvuahu. What does that mean? Helam means a lapse, and shvuah means an oath. So Abaye is saying at the end of the day, you're only going to be liable to sacrifice for that which is in your hands, which you put in your mouth. And at the end of the day, since what you put in your mouth ended up being wheat bread and not barley, so that's still going to be considered a lapse of an oath because you made an oath, I will not eat wheat bread. What you're putting in your mouth, you think is barley. So that's also a detail that's missing. So that's also going to be considered a lapse in your oath. I don't know, did they explain any better?
You are obligated to bring an offering home for that which you held in his hand. Even if this is based on the concealment of it.
Right. At the end of the day, you're still going to bring a sacrifice for this. And you only bring a sacrifice for that which is a lapse of the oath and not of the object. So at the end of the day, if this happens, you still bring an oath. And you only bring an oath if you have a lapse in your oath, not a lapse in the object, which doesn't sound like that case exists. So he says at the end of the day, you're still gonna have to bring an oath. If you're gonna bring it, if you bring a sacrifice, if you're gonna bring a sacrifice, it must be that it was still a lapse in your oath. At the end of the day, anything that is a misunderstood or a forgotten detail is going to be considered a lapse. Because at the end of the day, you think that really you're eating barley, and you're not eating. That's also considered a lapse. Another way of saying it, lishna achrina. What is that?
You don't know. It's like,
Right. So that's exactly it. The don't know. That's the lapse. That's the
okay.
lapse. That's exactly it. V'ne'el mimenu. V'ne'elam is a lapse. I don't know, or I forgot, or I wasn't sure. That's exactly, yeah, very good. If you would know the whole time, then it would be an inadvertent act, and that would not be, then you wouldn't get a sacrifice. Lishna achrina, another way of saying a very similar thing. Amalei Abai Rabbi Yosef, sof korban dekamaisiel. At the end of the day, you're still bringing a sacrifice for this. The hayi pas for this bread. So mias helam shvu. At the end of the day, nevertheless, it's still considered a lapse of a shvuah. It's not the same as you just don't know. Like you just forgot if your oath was I will or I will not, but still you still don't know. Since you the difference here that here you think you know. That's the difference. You think you know for sure it's barley. But even that, at the end of the day, you don't, at the end of the day, it's not true. So therefore that's also considered a lapse. Rav Yosef Amarlach Kevin Dechi Yadale, he says, I'll show you why it's a lapse in your shvuah. Why? Kevin Dechi Yadale, if you were to find out that this is wheat, so then you would abstain from it, right? Dechi Yadale Dechitinhu, Parish Mineh. Sorry, he argues. He said, I'll prove to you that it's actually a lapse in the object and not in the oath. Why? Because at the end of the day, if you were to find out that it's going to be wheat, so you would abstain from it. So that's going to be the litmus test. If you would know that this is wheat, you would abstain from it. So that is considered really a lapse in your object. Meaning, Rabbi Yosef sounds to like he seems to agree that there is a concept where you can have a lapse in the object itself. And his proof is if you were to find out that this is going to be wheat, of course you would abstain from that. Now, that's also a funny thing because if you find out it's wheat, so why does that show you it's more of a lapse in the object than it is a lapse in your shvuah? If you find out it's wheat, you'll just say, oh no, I made an oath that I can't eat wheat. I don't know. Right. We're going to ask right now a Gemara that we had earlier, which is going to basically, it sounds like, reject Rav Yosef. We're going to have a case where you, why is that the litmus test? Because now I told you what the object is, so you're abstaining from it?
Yeah, because you know what your oath is. You just don't know what you eat.
Uh-huh. It's not that someone tells you that your oath was what you really thought. You know what
your oath is what you thought it is.
So there's no lapse in the oath.
There's no lapse in the oath.
But it's just the object you weren't aware of.
Decaf coffee, caffeinated coffee.
Right.
I'm not going to drink decaf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
So
choice.
Jerry's not going to drink decaf.
Okay.
My cup of coffee.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
We'll pick some juice.
Right.
It's more like this.
So that you know what your oath is the whole time.
You know what your oath is the whole time. Picked up the wrong coffee.
Wrong coffee.
Okay.
Right.
Know that you cooked up the
Right. So that's the other part. I guess that's the other part. At the end of the day, you still don't have 100% clarity in what you're doing, so that's still a lapse in your oath, not a lapse in the object. That's a tricky. It's tricky. Yeah. Yeah. The pretzel's getting smaller, right? It is.
No,
I think it seems too straightforward, but I can see how you could try to put
There's two ways. Is it considered a lapse in your oath or a lapse in the object?
It's lapse of the object, right? Like I know exactly what my oath is,
Right.
and you're just mistaken about what the object is.
Uh-huh.
Like if you're mistaken, like, hey, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gemara trying to argue that it's not.
The other opinions held that, they held you'll still bring a sacrifice for it, which shows you that it's a lapse in your oath. Now, why is it a lapse in your oath? Yeah. Yeah. You're saying this one sounds more logical, this approach. I hear. Yeah, I guess the other opinion needs a little more explanation. This one sounds. I guess they hold that at the end of the day, your oath was, I will not eat, let's say, wheat bread or decaffeinated coffee. So any lack of knowledge in that is considered a lapse, even in your oath. You're asking, but you knew what your oath is the whole time. But your oath was going on a certain food, and the food you weren't sure of, or you were convinced wrongly. So how do you separate those two? Maybe those two go together. You can't separate those two. They're connected. Or no, you do separate them. Okay. Let's see a similar case, which we had earlier. So the guy forgot he was impure, and then he also forgot that he was in the temple. So, and we're going according to the opinion. We're going according to the opinion that that it's only if you forget that you're impure that you're liable for an offering. If you forget you're in the temple, you're not liable for an offering, according to that opinion. So the Gemara asks, what if you forgot both? Are you exempt or are you liable? What do you mean? You forgot that you were that you're impure, so therefore you're going to be liable. It says Gemara, you forgot that you're in the temple. You forgot that you're in the temple, and then you forgot about the object, that the temple is holy. You forgot that that's a holy place, and therefore you should be exempt. So, right, so Amar Rav Ashi, he says Chazinan. Well, ask the guy, why'd you run out of the Beis Hamikdash? Is it because you realized that you were impure, or you realized that the temple is a holy area, that you're in a holy area? Chazinan If he tells you, yeah, I realized I was impure, I ran out of there as fast as I could. Okay, so then you'll be liable. If he says like, oh, I just realized, oh my gosh, I'm like near the altar. I'm like, and that's holy. Then you're going to be exempt. So depending on what he responds to you. To that, Ravina says to Rav Ashi, that's not a indication of anything. It's just what you asked first. Depends what you asked first. He'll say, yeah, that's why. Right? But it doesn't show you that he didn't go away because of the other one. At the end of the day, maybe say a little differently. At the end of the day, he left because he was an impure person in the temple. So the fact that you asked him doesn't show you that. Why do you run away? Because I'm impure. Yeah, but you're impure, and therefore what? Oh, I'm in the temple, right? So why'd you run away? Because I was in the temple. Why can't you be in the temple? Oh, because I was impure. So they go together. So Ela Lo Shna. So Ela Lo Shna. That's not going to be a good indication of how to prohibit it, how to exempt the guy. Okay. Fine. Bo mine Rava me Rav Nachman. Rava asked Rav Nachman, Ezuhi shigagas shvuas bitui l'shavar. What's a case of a shigagas shvuas bitui l'shavar? So shigas, shogeg, inadvertent. Shvua, between oath of utterance, l'shavar in the past. What's a past oath that was made inadvertently? I ate, I didn't eat. Well, if you know, idi yada, if you know you didn't eat and you said you ate, so mezidu, that's called advertently. And idi lo yada, if you actually had no idea, onisu, you're an it's unavoidable. You had no recollection. So Amar Le, he said to him, Ba'omer, Yodei anisha shvuah zu asura. I know that this oath is prohibited. Aval eni yodei im chayav la korban. This is a big Gemara in Shabbos. What's considered inadvertent? You didn't know what the punishment was. You knew Shabbos, you can't do things. You just had no idea that if you do it, we're going to stone you. So you had an inadvertent. It was inadvertent because if you'd have known it was that intent, you would never have done it. So that's considered inadvertently. Or even if you knew it was prohibited, but you didn't know what that you bring a sacrifice for it. Maybe that's also considered inadvertent. So, I didn't know if I have to bring a sacrifice, if I violate the oath, that lack of a detail, that not knowing that detail, is enough to consider you someone who someone who did it inadvertently. Kiman, who holds that not knowing what sacrifice you bring is enough to be considered inadvertent. Kimunbaz, it's the name of a person, that probably doesn't come so often. Munbaz. The Amar Shigas Korban Shmei Shkaga. He holds that not knowing what sacrifice you bring, or if you bring a sacrifice, is enough to be considered already in something which is done inadvertently. You did the act inadvertently.
If you know the penalty, it doesn't change.
If you know the penalty and you don't know the sacrifice. Good question.
Sir, it wasn't speaking.
I knew there was jail time. I just didn't know it goes on my life. Yeah, you didn't know the. No, I mean if you didn't know the penalty, that's for sure. It's going to be shogeg. You knew the penalty, but you didn't know that if you do this act inadvertently, you'll be liable to sacrifice. So you still had a lack of knowledge. Mazid is you have to have full knowledge of what you're doing. That's why you get warned. If you do this, this will happen. You have to get all the consequences laid out there on the table. If you're even missing this detail, according to Munbaz, that's going to be a problem. Now, says the Gemara, we can even go according to the Rabbanan, who argue on Munbaz by Shabbos, but here they'll agree. Why? I feel tamer Rabbanan ad kan l'kli Rabbanan lad Munbaz ela b'chol Torah kula the lav chidushu awal hacha de chidushu the b'chol Torah kula lo eshchan lav the maisi korban the alfina avodah zara the hacha maisi afilu Rabbanan modu. Okay, so the Rabbanan in general say they argue on Munbaz in the rest of Torah because there's no novelty. You always bring a sacrifice when you do, if an Aveira that is done advertently, you get kares, inadvertently, you bring a sacrifice. There they argue. They say not knowing that is not considered inadvertent. That's not enough. And Mumma says it is enough. But over here, this is a novelty. Why? Because in the rest of the Torah, you bring a sacrifice on things that are similar to idol worship, things of that stature of Aveira, of Avodah Zarah. But here, where you're not liable for kares, you're not liable for capital punishment. It's just your oath. If you violate your oath, you bring a variable offering. So here you're bringing a korban, but it's a novel example of bringing a korban. Usually you bring a korban, a sacrifice, for being over much more grave things like Avodah Zarah. There they argue if you don't know what sacrifice you bring. But by a case like this, which is a novelty, that you're bringing a sacrifice even for just violating an oath, there even the rabbis will agree that if you're missing in that detail, that'll still be considered inadvertent. Yeah. You made a shvuah, you're not eating pizza today, you're not eating a loaf of bread today, and you got deathly ill. A person got deathly ill, and you need this loaf. So Mahu says, mistaken, you're deathly ill. Of course it's allowed. We do anything to save a Jewish life. So that's that. No, what it means, Ela mitztaer, really, he's fasting. He's very hungry. He's in a state of hunger. Ela mitztaer v'achla. So now let's say he made an oath not to have the loaf, and then he goes into extreme hunger, not deathly hungry. He's hungry, extremely hungry, and even if he had a lapse, he forgot that he made the oath. But in this case, even if he didn't forget he made the oath, he knew it, he still would have eaten it because he's so hungry. He's starving. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. So since he would have eaten it anyways, even if he would have known about the oath, now that he didn't know about his oath, he forgot about the oath. Is that considered inadvertent or not? Usually inadvertent is if you had known that you made a shvuah, you would not eat that. But here you would have eaten anyways. So that's the question. Beshiga shvuah mai. Is that considered inadvertent? Since you would have eaten it anyways, nothing would have stopped you because you're starving. You haven't eaten in 3 days. So Amarle Tanina. Shav midiyaso maybe korban al shigagaso. Lo shav midiyaso ain maybe korban al shigagaso. The rule is from Shabbos that it's only something where if you would have known, you would have stopped yourself. So therefore, when you did it, that's called inadvertent. Because if I would have done that, I never would have done it. Obviously, what I did now, that's going to be inadvertent. That's going to be considered a shogeg, inadvertent. But if anyways you would have done it, So that's not called inadvertent anymore. And therefore, you're not going to be liable a sacrifice. Amar Shmuel, Gamar Belibo, you decide in your heart to make a Shavuot. Does that work? Says Shmuel, no. You got to speak it out. Tzarech shioti b'svasav. You have to utter it with your lips. How do I know? Very simple. Shenamar levati b'svasayim. You must utter it with your lips. Torah says utter with your lips. In your heart, it's not going to work. Meisvei b'svasayim lo belev Gamar Belibo minayin. The Bryce says, okay, with your lips and not in your heart, I hear. Gamar Belibo, but if you just made a Shavuot in your heart, how do I know that it works? Everything, any Shavuot that you make, l'chol, including even in your heart, is going to work. So it sounds like even in your heart does work to make an oath. Says the Gemara, before you go on Shmuel, you have an internal contradiction. Why? Hagufa kasha. You yourself just contradicted yourself. How? You said, Amris bisvasayim v'lo believe. You said, I have to make an oath with my lips and not my heart. And then you said, and then you said, how do I know that it works if I just make it in my heart? Which one is it? Do you have to utter it or do you not have to utter it? So first, let's solve the internal contradiction. No, halo kasha. That itself is not a problem. Hakikamer, this is what he means to say. Bisvasayim v'lo shagamar belibo. If you uttered it with your mouth, v'lo shagamar belibo lahotzi bisvasav v'lo hotzi. So you utter with your lips, and not that you v'lo shagamar belibo lahotzi bisvasav v'lo hotzi. So let's say, what's an example of this? For sure, you have to utter with your lips. Okay. Now, let's hold it here. It's gonna be a long run sentence. Okay. Let's hold it here.